The sun had not yet risen over Hollow Creek, a small American town tucked between dense pine forests and winding rivers. Life here was quiet, simple, until the summer of 1987, when a series of disappearances would change everything. At first, no one paid much attention. People went missing in big cities all the time. But in Hollow Creek, a place where everyone knew everyone, it was impossible to vanish without a trace, unless something far darker was happening. It started with a 17-year-old high school senior, Emily Ross. Blonde hair, blue eyes, the kind of girl who lit up any room she entered. She left her evening shift at the local diner one Friday night and was never seen again. Her bicycle was found leaning against the back wall of the diner, unlocked. Her purse was still inside, untouched. The cash register had been closed properly. It was as if she had walked out into thin air. The sheriff, a man named Harold Briggs, organized a search party immediately. Neighbors combed the woods, dragging flashlights across the dense undergrowth. Bloodhounds were brought in, and for 2 days they tracked a faint scent that led them to the banks of Hollow Creek itself. But there, the trail ended. Emily's parents refused to believe she had run away. Her room was left untouched, her diary sitting wide open, the last entry dated just hours before she vanished. Something feels wrong tonight. I keep hearing footsteps outside my window. Maybe it's nothing, but I can't shake the feeling I'm being watched. 2 weeks later, Hollow Creek was shaken again. This time it wasn't a disappearance. It was murder. A long-haul trucker, Daniel Moore, was found slumped over his steering wheel at the Hollow Creek truck stop. His throat had been slashed so cleanly that investigators at first thought it was self-inflicted. But the angle of the cut proved otherwise. The truck's cab was locked from the inside. No fingerprints were found. No weapon was recovered. The only clue left behind was a single Polaroid photograph tucked into the visor above the driver's seat. The photo showed Emily Ross, alive, terrified, bound to a chair in what looked like a basement. Sheriff Briggs turned pale when he saw it. The girl everyone assumed had been swallowed by the woods was still alive. But where? And who was sending these messages? Word spread fast. Hollow Creek had gone from a peaceful town to the backdrop of a nightmare. Parents stopped letting their children out after dark. The diner where Emily had last worked shut down, unable to cope with the haunting stares of her missing posters. Then came another strange discovery. A gas station attendant named Marcy claimed she had seen Emily the night she vanished. Around midnight, a dark pickup truck had pulled into the lot. Emily was in the passenger seat, pale and trembling. The driver was a man with a wide-brimmed hat pulled low over his face. When Marcy asked if everything was okay, the man had smiled, too wide, too sharp, and said, "She's fine. Just tired." But Emily's eyes told a different story. They screamed for help. By the time Marcy gathered the courage to call the sheriff, the truck was gone. Her testimony was brushed aside at first. People whispered that Marcy drank too much on her late shifts. But now, in light of the Polaroid, her words carried new weight. 3 more people disappeared that summer. A young mechanic named Trevor, last seen locking up his shop. A college student home for the holidays, vanishing from her parents' porch. And finally, a mother of 2, whose car was found abandoned on the side of the road with the engine still running. Each time, a Polaroid appeared days later, slipped under the sheriff's office door, or taped to the windows of local businesses. Each photo showed the victim alive, bound, terrified. Always in the same dimly lit basement. Always with the same clock in the background, its hands frozen at 3:17. The media descended on Hollow Creek. News vans lined Main Street. Reporters whispered about a serial kidnapper who played sick games with the police. Sheriff Briggs, exhausted and haunted, began to unravel. He slept in his office, his desk piled with photographs, maps, and red string crisscrossing the town. His deputy swore he heard Briggs muttering in the middle of the night. "He's watching us. He's always watching us." In September, nearly 3 months after Emily's disappearance, a package arrived at the sheriff's office. No return address. Inside was a VHS tape. The footage was grainy, black and white, and flickered with static. It showed the basement from the Polaroids. Emily was there, barely recognizable, thin and weak. Her lips trembled as she whispered into the camera. "Please, he says only one of us can go home. Please don't let him choose." Before she could finish, the camera jerked violently. A shadow passed across the lens, a tall figure, faceless in the dim light. A voice, low and cold, filled the room. "The game begins tonight." The screen went black. Sheriff Briggs slammed his fist against the desk. For the first time, Hollow Creek wasn't just dealing with disappearances. They were dealing with a predator who wanted to be seen. The sheriff's office was dead silent. The fluorescent lights hummed faintly above, but no one moved, no one breathed. Deputy Ray, a man known for his steady nerves, stared at the blank television screen like he'd just seen the devil himself. Sheriff Briggs leaned forward, rubbing his face with both hands. His knuckles were white. "Play it again," he said. His voice cracked. Ray hesitated. "Sheriff, you sure? Play it again." And so the tape rewound, the hiss of static filling the room. Once more, Emily appeared on screen, her eyes sunken, her voice trembling. Her plea seemed even more desperate the second time. "Please, he says only one of us can go home. Please don't let him choose." Then the figure. The shadow. That voice. "The game begins tonight." The tape ended. The machine clicked. And the silence in the room felt heavier than before. By morning, the story was everywhere. Local news anchors replayed Emily's trembling face on loop, while national outlets sent journalists to Hollow Creek. Cameramen swarmed the courthouse steps, demanding answers Sheriff Briggs couldn't give. For the townspeople, the fear was unbearable. Parents refused to send their kids to school. Businesses closed earlier than ever. Farmers in the outskirts started carrying rifles on their tractors. Everyone whispered the same question: who was next? But behind closed doors, another whisper spread: what if the killer wasn't a stranger at all? What if he was one of them? That same week, something happened that tore Hollow Creek apart. Around 3 a.m., the sheriff's office alarm tripped. Someone had broken in. By the time deputies arrived, the intruder was gone, but what they left behind was worse than anything found so far. Pinned to the bulletin board, with a hunting knife driven through the paper, was a single Polaroid. It showed Sheriff Briggs's own daughter, Anna. She was gagged, tied to a chair in that same basement. For a moment, Briggs collapsed. His deputies thought his heart had stopped. But then he rose, trembling, his face red with rage. "He's taunting us. He's inside this town. He's closer than we think." That night, the sheriff locked himself inside his office, armed with a shotgun, staring at maps until dawn. The survivor's voice. Just when the town was spiraling, a voice from the past resurfaced. In the next county over, a woman named Clara Jennings came forward. She was in her 30s now, but in 1975, 12 years earlier, she too had been abducted in a nearby town. She was missing for 6 weeks before managing to escape through a broken window in the farmhouse where she'd been held. When reporters asked why she never spoke out, Clara said something that froze everyone's blood. "He told me if I ever talked, he'd come back for me. And not just me, for my family too." The sheriff drove to meet her in person. Clara's hands shook as she described the man. He wore a wide-brimmed hat. He never showed his face clearly. He called his victims contestants. And he made her play games, sick games, where winning meant surviving another day. Sheriff Briggs asked the most important question. "Did you ever hear his name?" Clara looked him dead in the eye. Her lips quivered. "Yes," she whispered. "He called himself the Host." The very next night, Hollow Creek received another package. Not a tape this time, something worse. Inside were 3 envelopes. Each one had a name scrawled across the front. Envelope 1, Trevor, the missing mechanic. Envelope 2, Linda, the mother of two. Envelope 3, Anna Briggs, the sheriff's daughter. Sheriff Briggs tore his open first. Inside was a Polaroid of Anna, still tied up, but now she had a card in her lap. A playing card. The Queen of Hearts. The second envelope showed Linda with the 7 of spades. The third, Trevor with the King of Clubs. At the bottom of the box was a note, typed neatly on white paper. 3 players. 1 prize. Choose wisely, Sheriff. Only one will walk free. Briggs could barely breathe. He slammed his fists into the desk, shouting curses until his voice was gone. His deputies begged him to take a break, but he refused. "This is my fault," he muttered. "He's punishing me." He refused to go home. He refused to sleep. And as the hours passed, he began to see patterns no one else did. He claimed the Polaroids weren't random. The cards were a code. He scribbled numbers, dates, and symbols across the walls of his office until it looked like the ravings of a madman. But when his deputy pointed out that the numbers 317 kept appearing, the same time frozen on the basement clock in every photo, Briggs froze. "March 17th, he whispered. "That's the date of the county fair." The same fair where Anna had begged him to take her the year before Emily vanished. The sheriff began to suspect the nightmare wasn't random. It was personal. 3 nights later, the deputies set up a sting operation at the old county fairgrounds, long abandoned and rotting. Hidden cameras, snipers, and undercover officers waited in silence. At exactly 3:17 a.m., the floodlights cut out. Total darkness swallowed the fairgrounds. And then, faintly, the calliope music of an old carousel began to play. The sound echoed across the empty grounds, warped and haunting, though no one had touched the rusted ride in years. The deputies scrambled, weapons drawn, radios crackling. The carousel spun slowly, its horses jerking unnaturally in the dark. When they rushed forward, they found something tied to one of the horses. Another Polaroid. This one showed all 3 captives, Trevor, Linda, and Anna, together, seated at a long wooden table. In front of them were 3 glasses of water. The caption scrawled at the bottom read, "2 are poisoned. 1 is not. Choose." The Polaroid fluttered in the deputy's hands, caught in the night wind. The sheriff stared at it, his throat tight, his eyes hollow. Anna. His daughter. Sitting between Trevor and Linda. Each of them looking into the camera with wide, helpless eyes. And those 3 glasses of water in front of them. 2 poisoned. 1 safe. Sheriff Briggs's hands shook. His deputies looked to him for direction, but he couldn't speak. He could barely breathe. And then, across the fairgrounds, a voice boomed through hidden speakers. A distorted voice, deep and cold, filling the night air. "Welcome, Sheriff. Welcome to my stage." The deputies whipped their guns around, scanning the shadows, but there was no one. Only that voice, echoing from everywhere and nowhere. "You've studied my clues. You've read my messages. Now, you'll play. Because every choice comes with a price." The carousel began to spin again, creaking louder, its rusted horses groaning with every rotation. The lights flickered, dim bulbs that hadn't glowed in years now burning an unnatural yellow. Sheriff Briggs's knees buckled. He wanted to scream, to demand his daughter's release, but his voice cracked when he tried. "You bastard!" Deputy Ray shouted instead. "Show yourself!" The voice laughed, slow and deliberate. "Oh, I'll show myself. When the game is over." The speakers hissed. Then, another sound bled through, the faint clink of glass. The deputies froze. It was live audio. Somewhere, right now, Anna, Trevor, and Linda were seated at that table. And someone was placing those glasses in front of them. Anna's muffled sob broke through the static. "Daddy, please." Sheriff Briggs stumbled forward, collapsing to his knees. His gun clattered on the ground. "I'm here, baby. Hold on, I'm here." The host's voice cut over hers. 3 glasses. 2 poisoned. Only 1 safe. But here's the twist, Sheriff, you must decide who drinks first. The sheriff's stomach turned. He clutched his chest as if his heart had stopped. You're sick, he rasped. The voice chuckled. Sick? No. I'm fair. I offer choice. I offer hope. But hope is sharp, Sheriff. It cuts. Unknown to the sheriff, the game wasn't just playing out at the fairgrounds. Every television in Hollow Creek flickered that night, whether switched on or not. Static poured across the screens until a new image appeared. The basement. The 3 captives. And a clock on the wall, its hand stuck at 3:17. Every living room, every bar, every bedroom across the town now watched the same broadcast. Parents clutched their children. Teenagers cried. Old men shook their heads in horror. No one knew how the signal had hijacked every set. But one thing was clear, the whole town was now part of the game. At the fairgrounds, Sheriff Briggs staggered to his feet. He shouted into the night. Take me. Let them go. The voice came back, colder than before. You don't get to quit. You started this game the moment you became sheriff. Every missed clue. Every wasted hour. Every child you failed to protect. This blood is on you. Briggs's deputies looked at him, unsettled. Was the host telling the truth? Did Briggs know more than he'd ever admitted? Deputy Ray stepped forward, his voice shaking. Sheriff, is there something you're not telling us? The sheriff turned, his face red with rage. Don't you dare. Not now. But deep inside, guilt gnawed at him. There was something buried years ago, that no one knew. The speakers crackled again. Time for a hint. The poisoned glasses are marked. The safe one is not. The Polaroid was still in Briggs's hand. He looked closer. His heart stopped. On the card in front of Trevor, the king of clubs, there was a faint smear across the table. Dark, almost invisible. Like the shadow of a drop. He flipped to Linda's photo, the 7 of spades. There, on the rim of her glass, the faintest reflection. The carousel slowed, groaning as if its rusted gears were tearing themselves apart. The laughter faded, replaced by a deafening silence. Deputies froze in their positions. The sheriff stood rigid, his face pale under the strobing bulbs. His lips trembled, whispering words too quiet to hear. Ray stepped closer. Sheriff, who is he? Briggs turned his head slowly, his eyes hollow, haunted. He was a boy once, a boy I should have saved. Before Ray could press, the speakers crackled again. Tick, tock. The basement clock appeared on every television in Hollow Creek once more. 3:23. The static cleared, revealing the 3 captives at the table. Anna, Trevor, Linda, each with a glass in front of them. Their hands were tied, but their eyes locked on the camera like it was their last chance to be seen. Anna's cheeks were streaked with tears. Daddy, don't let him make me drink it. Linda whispered prayers under her breath. Trevor tried to steady himself, but his lips quivered. The host's voice filled every living room again. 3 players. 1 choice. Sheriff, you've studied the photos. You think you've cracked my code. Now prove it. The camera zoomed slowly onto the glasses, condensation rolling down their sides. The air in the basement seemed heavy, suffocating. Choose who drinks first, or all 3 will drink at once. The countdown began on the screen, 06:59. 06:58. 6:57. Briggs dropped to his knees, clutching his chest. His breath came shallow, uneven. I can't do this. Deputy Ray crouched beside him. Sheriff, look at me. If you don't decide, all 3 of them die. Briggs's face twisted in agony. But if I choose wrong, if I kill her, his voice broke. He pressed the Polaroids to his forehead like they were scripture. He could still see the faint marks, the clues only he noticed. But doubt gnawed at him. What if the host knew he'd notice? What if the clean glass was the trap? The countdown ticked lower. 5:02, 5:01.